All right, fifth grade, we are going to today kind of start talking more about the 7 Years' War. What are some very important things about it? Kind of the first half of why this war was important. Now, you might actually go through the rest of your schooling never hearing about this war again, and I think that that's crazy talk. Okay, so this war is super important for the creation of our country that we are in today, the United States. And that's why we're going to talk about it a little bit today. We're going to talk about it some more on Friday too. Okay, so just first here, there's a link that I posted here. This will bring you to that website, Ducksters, that we like to use in fifth grade. There will be a video here. Has nothing to do with Barbie. This is an ad. But go ahead and watch this. It's about 3 minutes long. It does a good job of kind of explaining what was going on. They're going to call it the French and Indian War. But really, it's the same thing as the 7 Years' War. They're just kind of talking about when they named it the French and Indian War, it's kind of the battle that was going on in the colonies. But it was really the same thing. Okay, so watch that video there. You can go ahead and you can read some of these things about it as well. But really, the video here is going to give you more of an idea of what's going on. And then, of course, here's the video from me that you'll watch to do the notes for today. Okay, so here is what we will do today. We're going to answer some questions, look at a couple things that are going to be important. Okay. All right, so we're going to start over here in this top left box. Why was this war fought? It was fought for two reasons. So both England and France wanted the Ohio River Valley. So both England and France wanted the Ohio River Valley. Okay, so I don't know if we talked about this a little bit earlier here. We just see the Ohio River Valley. Okay. It's kind of this area here. Bring it up here on the map. Okay. Where is it? Okay, so the Ohio River Valley kind of goes, if you can follow my mouse here, kind of goes all the way down Illinois to Kentucky to Indiana to Ohio, which makes sense, right? Ohio. Goes down on the bottom of Ohio all the way up here to kind of Pennsylvania. So a pretty big area, the Ohio River, and everything around this area is called the Ohio River Valley, right? And that is what the English and the French were fighting over. They really wanted this land right here. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of small towns here, right? But also some big cities like Louisville. You see all those roads that are there. Some big cities like Cincinnati. Let's see what else we got here. That's about it. Pittsburgh here, but that's a little further away from the Ohio River over here. But there's a lot of farmland, a lot of very important things that they wanted. Okay. Another reason why was because of the fur trade. And so the French, people that were from France, they were spending a lot of time in this part of the world hanging out with Native Americans and getting to know them better and hunting things like beavers, muskrats, skunks, woodchucks, a lot of rodents that we have here in today what we would call the United States of America. And they were taking them and they were using their fur and selling them for a lot of money back home in France, okay, for like fashion. All right, so the fur trade was very important for the French, and they didn't want the English to get in their way. Okay, the British people to get in their way. Okay. Okay. So now, why did this war cost so much money? So really what we're going to be talking about here is the consequences afterwards. How after this, the British, they had no money. They were very, I don't want to say poor, but this war cost them a lot of money. So why? Okay, first of all, the king paid the colonists to fight Okay. The king didn't really want to use his soldiers for this fight. If you remember when we talked about how this was kind of the First World War, there were battles going on all over the world. This area over here to the king was really not that important. For him, what was more important were the things that were going on in Europe and elsewhere around the world. In Australia, there was even a little bit of fighting. He saw that those things were more important, and so he didn't want to send his soldiers over here to the colonies to fight the French. And so he just told the colonists that lived here, so people that just like lived in the colonies, not people that were trained to use guns or to fight, to go ahead and go and to protect their land from the French. Okay, and go and try to save this Ohio River Valley. Okay, and that would be like today if the president said, you know what? We don't need to use our soldiers. Mr. Lund, why don't you go just see if you can find a gun and go fight? All right, so you'd have to pay me to go and do that. Okay, so that's one reason why it costs so much money, is because they're paying the colonists here to fight for them. And then also, like we said, there were battles all over the world, right? So there was not only just like, this was a war, right? The 7 Years' War. This was just one part of it. There are battles all over the place. And so you have to pay for all of those soldiers to get where they need to go. You need to pay for the guns and the weapons and the ammunition. You need to pay for the food to make sure that they're, eating and healthy, and their uniforms and all of it, right? It costs a lot of money to have a war. So that was another reason why this war cost so much money, especially for the British and the king. Okay, we're going to jump over here. Before that, I do just want to talk about this map here. Okay, we have two rivers. So this one that kind of goes from the top to the bottom. This right here, this is like the United States. Like if I zoom out here, I guess this is the best way that I could do this map. So if you see, here's kind of down the east coast. Here's Florida. Here's Louisiana where it kicks out. Kind of like right here. Here's Florida. Here's Louisiana. That blue first river is the Mississippi River. Kind of cuts right through the United States. That is the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River. Okay, that river should sound familiar. It goes right down the middle of the Twin Cities, so it cuts Minneapolis and St. Paul right down the two. And then this one here that kind of juts out, the one that goes right back into the colonies by Pennsylvania, we talked about how that is the Ohio River. All right, and these little, you could call them, I don't even know what to call them, T's, circles with a cross in the middle. Those are major battles that happened between the British and the French. Okay, so you can see most of them are around here in the Ohio River Valley. That's kind of the area that both of those groups really wanted. So it makes sense that that's where a lot of the battles took place. Okay, a lot of colonists died, a lot of French died, a lot of Native Americans died. And remember that the reason why the Native Americans wanted to fight was because that they thought the French would be able to help them, to save them from the king and the colonists that lived over here, that were taking their land. Okay, two more things for today, then we're going to wrap up. So first, Proclamation of 1763. This is very important. Okay, so kind of, I don't want to give away too much here, but the end of this battle, the British people end up winning, right? The colonists end up beating the French in this war. And they were fighting over the Ohio River Valley, which a lot of the colonists were very excited. They thought it was getting a little too crowded over here. They wanted this wide open free land that they didn't have at the time. And they won, so they were able to have it. But what happened? So first of all, the British, we'll just call it the Valley for now. Okay, the British gained the Valley, so they were able to say, okay, we won. French, get out of here. This is ours. See you later. Go back to France. But at the same time, the king said that you couldn't move there. Right? So if you were a colonist here in the British colonies, and you were somebody who wanted to move to this new land that the British just got, hey, king, we're going to go out there. King says no. So the Proclamation of 1763 was kind of like a law, you could call it, that made sure that nobody could live over here. Okay? And the reason why, so a lot of you might be saying, like, why? That doesn't make any sense. It just won. They just got that valley. Why can't they go over there? The reason why was actually, it made a little sense. They just spent all this money on this battle, or on this war against the French, right? It was very expensive for the king. And over here in the Ohio River Valley, yes, they just gained it, but it's not like nobody lives there. The Native Americans live there, right? This was all their land before anybody else came. And so if people wanted to go and to live in this area, they would have to fight the Native Americans. And the king didn't want to have any more battles, didn't want to have any more, people or soldiers or weapons have to get bought or paid for to go and fight. Right? He just wanted peace. He wanted, hey, you know what? We don't have very much money right now. Let's just relax. Let's just chill. And we're not going to go and try to fight some Native Americans right now. Okay, so that's kind of why that decision was made for the Proclamation of 1763. So now we have two last things here. How does this war lead up to the American Revolution? Okay, so this was, we're talking about the British colonies here. We're not talking about the United States of America because that had not been created yet. The United States of America was created. So the country that we live in today was created during the American Revolution. This war that we're talking about now, the 7 Years' War, the things that happened during this war lead to the American Revolution. Okay? And two ways that this is the case is because the king needs money, which equals taxes. Okay, because the king, it was very expensive to do this war against the French, not only here but also around the world, and the king needs money back, right? It's expensive to lead a country, and so one way to get money is to increase taxes. So to tell the people that live in your country and in the colonies to pay more taxes. Now that made the colonists very upset. And we'll talk about kind of what happens in the next coming, probably about 10, 15 years after this. That kind of leads to a revolution, a fight. Okay. And then also another reason why colonists couldn't move west. Okay, so I have this red line here. This is just I drew this on Google Slides, so it's not perfect at all. It's kind of messy, but this is a pretty good representation of where the colonists could live. Anything to the west, so to what we see, anything to the left of this red line is what you would just say like off limits, out of bounds. Okay, so Minnesota is kind of like up in this region in the map. Colonists couldn't live there. Okay, only Native Americans lived there. Some French. Down here in Florida, Native Americans lived, also some Spanish people, but nobody from the British colonies. They were not allowed to. Okay, that was another reason. They were upset by that. They did not like the king's decision there. And that was another reason why this leads up to the American Revolution. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about this war on Friday. We'll talk about 7 Years' War Part 2. Just a few very important, some small details, but very important things. We'll talk about George Washington for the first time. Yes, he was the first president of the United States, but that's in, many years from now. But he actually fought in this war, the 7 Years' War. And we'll talk about how this is kind of the beginning of his legacy, of how a lot of people think that he's a hero. Okay, so we'll talk more about him on Friday and some other more important things about this war as well. And then we'll start talking about kind of the pressure that was building in the colonies and how they really despised the king and how there ended up being a war, a major fight that resulted from this. Okay, office hours at 10:05. If you have any questions, stop on by and we'll work together. All right.